Hi, I'm Justy. Welcome back to The Skeptheist, an ongoing series of videos in which I discuss the concepts of skepticism and igtheism. Who am I? That's irrelevant for today's discussion, but if you are interested, here's the sort of thing I like to do.
Check this out!
Now that's out of the way, let's talk about today's topic. Quantum nonsense. Whew! It's amazing what you can do with quantum technology. It appears to have almost no limitation, and that's what I'd like to talk about today, the nonsense that surrounds the idea of quantum mechanics. Now, Richard Feynman once famously said, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics. And this is a bit of a double-edged sword, unfortunately. On the one hand, it very accurately describes the bizarre and counterintuitive nature of quantum mechanics. The things that occur at the quantum level are so counterintuitive and so bizarre to us that they almost seem like magic, and they are hard to understand. So the flip side of that statement is it seems that certain people and groups of people have taken this as a call to arms to essentially propagate nonsense about quantum mechanics. It can mean whatever you think you want it to mean, which is of course not the case. So the last thing I'll say about what Feynman said is that it is indeed possible to understand quantum mechanics at some level, certainly sufficiently to identify any nonsense that's propagated about it. And again, that's the purpose of today's talk. So the first piece of quantum-related nonsense I'd like to discuss today is the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? And by the way, I wasn't a skeptical thinker when I first watched the movie, but I was certainly into science and was very interested in quantum mechanics. So straight away I was interested in what the movie had to say. It was entertaining from the presentation point of view. And it really didn't raise any red flags until fairly far into the movie when a channeler appeared. At that point I did become a little bit skeptical, but that is just a bit of an aside. I mean, I can't believe that people would fall for that aspect of it. But now this was completely out of the blue, and it sent my alarm bells and my ringing and my red flags into the alert position, and WTF, which of course means where's the facts. But let's talk about what the idea is. The power of the mind. Now, again, that's a completely general statement. The power of the mind is thinking. So it could be illogical thinking, it could be brilliant thinking, it could be positive thinking, it could be negative thinking, but that's what the power of the mind is. Something to bear in mind here, and this is certainly not an original thought of mine, is that if these powers were actually real, they would have spread like evolutionary wildfire a long time ago. My point, though, is that it's not closed-minded to not look for fairies at the bottom of the garden. So that is, I believe, a clear case of quantum nonsense. And I'll cover this in a future episode, and it has been covered by many other skeptics, but there is a minimum set of red flags that you need to be aware of when assessing claims. And one of those red flags, of course, is when the person making the claims has something fiscally to gain by you accepting those claims, and indeed buying the book, buying the product, seeing the movie. And so now we move on to quantum nonsense number 2, the book and the movie, The Secret. The first thing that should come to mind here is the meaningless nature of such a title. It's like saying something is new. As soon as you've said it's new, minutes later it doesn't apply. The same with The Secret. I'm amazed how often people fall for this, that, you know, it's a secret that I'm going to tell everyone. And indeed the desire of the author, who I'm ashamed to say is Australian, is obviously to spread the idea and to make money from the book and the film and what have you. So right away we have an intellectual dissonance between the concepts of keeping something a secret and spreading the secret. The other thing to mention here, of course, is like any idea, whether we can say that it's right or wrong or morally good or bad, is the seductiveness of the idea. To use the viral analogy once again, a protein coating that surrounds most viruses is the virus's mechanism of infiltrating the cell. The same is true of ideas, in a much more complex way, of course. So the idea of the secret is seductive because it has this element of mysticism. It has an element of, you know, only you are going to find this out, you and of course millions of other people. It also has this idea of they don't want you to know. And friends, that is a major red flag. This whole they don't want you to know it smacks of conspiracy thinking. Now, whether the people writing the books actually believe that or not is irrelevant. They want you to believe that, quite obviously. Nothing more need be said about this. It's a childish attempt to make the idea more enticing than it is on its own merits. Believe it or not, there is something to The Secret, but What I mean specifically is the power of positive thinking and conversely the power of negative thinking. The ideas I think are great are being a positive person, thinking positively. I believe in being positive. So that's kind of an axiom. I have no logical reason, I suppose, to be positive, other than the my responsibility to society to not be a maudlin, emo bastard. But I am positive because I like the way it makes me feel, and I like the way it makes other people feel. I can see when I'm nice to people and positive about things that it makes the world a better place, and conversely being negative makes it a worse place. And I learnt this a long time ago from someone very close to me, that if you think positively, you'll feel better, and in general, you will have a better chance of accomplishing things. So I'll give you a practical example from my own life really quickly. I like to do adventurously athletic things. I like to skateboard, jump between rocks, climb trees, all that kind of stuff. And I know that if there's a moment of doubt in my mind about performing a certain move on a skateboard, or jumping from rock to rock, that's generally when I fall or have some sort of accident. Whereas if I believe I can do it, my body kind of follows. And I don't think there's anything mystical to that at all. The beef I have to pick with this movie, The Secret, is that it takes that perfectly legitimate idea and it distorts it into monstrous proportions. And it adds I have to say, an air of shallow materialism to it, which is completely inappropriate to that idea. Okay, so if you want those material things, that's fair enough, I suppose, and you can work towards them. But what The Secret claims is that you can almost defy the laws of physics. So we're done with The Secret. At its core, a perfectly legitimate, and by the way, free idea that can be spread from person to person, but unfortunately mixed in with a lot of very unrealistic and it has to be said, shallow and materialistic ideas. But materialism is not the subject of this podcast, so we'll move on. So another piece of quantum nonsense to discuss here is the sequel to the What the Bleep movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? Down the Rabbit Hole, which of course is a very clumsy allusion to a Lewis Carroll novel. So to be clear, I haven't actually seen this movie. It was one of those, what are they called? Straight to YouTube kinds of features. It was that sort of quality. But I saw the preview, and the preview is a perfect example of the quantum nonsense I'd like to talk about. But it was a great test of skeptical thinking because it tries to lead you down the rabbit hole. And again, at the start, it's making perfectly, I wouldn't even say reasonable claims, I'd just say factual claims. So it referred to Young's double-slit experiment, and all of that was fine. And then here's where it made the mistake. It confused observing the experiment with measuring the experiment. Okay, so the last piece of quantum nonsense to discuss here are the claims made by one Deepak Chopra. I'll just show you a very quick clip about the sort of thing I mean when he was confronted by Richard Dawkins about the co-opting of the term quantum.
Where did the quantum theory come into that?
Oh, it's just a metaphor, just like an electron or a photon is an indivisible unit of information and energy. A thought is an indivisible unit of consciousness.
Oh, so it's a metaphor for a unit. It's nothing to do with quantum theory as in physics.
No, I think quantum theory has a lot of things to say about observer effect.
So it's wonderful to see someone like Richard Dawkins bring it to Mr. Chopra in that respect. So to summarise, it's time to stop using the Q word out of context. The other piece of disingenuous intellectual double-sidedness that I'd like to highlight here is that it is science, and it was scientists who discovered quantum mechanics and modelled it and did all the work, essentially. And it strikes me as extremely hypocritical to simultaneously try and leverage the good work of quantum mechanics by using just the term itself, or bastardizing the concepts and co-opting the concepts from quantum mechanics to serve a shallow fiscal purpose, and at the same time, to use highly scientific jargon, diss the good work of scientists and claim that that they're suppressing things, that they don't know everything, which is never a claim that was made, by the way. Yeah, that's lame, people. So let's try and put a stop to the nonsense, shall we? I hereby swear on the holy piece of air in front of my hand that I will not use the Q word in any but the most appropriate of contexts. Repeat after me. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed today's episode of The Skeptheist, Quantum Nonsense. Stay tuned for more. Next week we'll talk about Igtheism and Entheism. Quantum mechanics says that I'm simultaneously here and here. Woo! Stay tuned for more and take care. Take care. That's my catchy phrase. Take care.